Mega Man X6. This analysis of sorts is going to be all over the place. We'll be comparing X6 to X7, which are both bad games in their own right, but I want to get this out of the way. X6 didn't need to exist, or even should exist, but it could have been a really great game. Everything was there for it, but Capcom found a way to Capcom it all up and release something that is clearly uninspired at several points. To do this right, we're going to take a full tour of X6. This is going to be similar to what I did a while back for Mega Madness for X7, but this will be less of a let's play and more of a critique of sorts. Let's get started. If Mega Man X4 didn't give you the clear indication of the game going full anime style, the intro of Mega Man X6 will be sure to remind you. This is the best you get though. You don't get cutscenes like X4, but you at least get spoken word text unlike X5 in Japanese. The intro contains a random J-Rock, is that a thing? I think it is. Intro track while showing clips and text to explain the story that should have been left well alone. Right in the beginning of X6, you see why the X series should have ended right there and then. X, left with the memory of Zero via his Z-Saber, and then cuts into random X6 related clips with not much context, and BAM! Welcome to the world of Mega Man X6. Apparently, just like in X4 in the past, we're really not trying to properly introduce these characters. They're just there. Moving on. The intro stage and its music. Here we see one of the few genuinely redeeming parts of the game. The music sets the stage for the desperate nature of things, and you're the lonely X in battle once again. Now everyone knows, as mentioned earlier, that things should have ended with X5, but it didn't. So let's explore how this game could have been good and a final hoorah, and just one more game in, even without Inafune's approval. The level is your typical awesome X-fashioned intro level, with wheels that appear in which you can dispatch of properly by using none other than the Z-Saber. While X is not as skilled at wielding it, which I assume is just because it's a slow swing, it is a powerful one, and essentially the final hit in Zero's 3-hit combo. The boss isn't anywhere near as exciting, especially after running into Sigma as a boss in the intro stage in X5. I guess this will have to do, and plus Sigma's dead, much like Dr. Wily remains defeated in each game in the Classic series, so let's pretend here. Commander Yamark stage. It's the start of what's to come. Uninspired level design and cheap tactics which can lead to death, missed pathways, and excuses to play levels again due to the aforementioned uninspired level design. There are these flying mantis type enemies in which once you kill, they come right back. They can't die. Forget them. It is what it is. Do you like the concept of nightmares, or at least the word? This game does. Within the context of the story, the nightmare is a creation of Gate, which is the main villain of the game, made through the use of the passing of Zero's DNA. Now, he uses this to control Reploids and cause trouble in the game. The Nightmare Virus enemies you see littered throughout the stages, once you kill them, they'll drop a soul. It's essentially this game's currency of sorts and enables you to use equip slots in your armor. The soul is big at first and worth more than when you first get it. If you wait about 3 seconds, it becomes a smaller one and it's worth less. The game doesn't tell you that. What the game also fails to tell you is that you are timed in collecting said soul, and if you don't on time, the soul will vanish. The enemy regenerates, and when you kill it again, you get no soul whatsoever. This becomes a problem sometimes due to enemy placement, as in the game sometimes will fill up a particular section with these guys, sometimes making it impossible to get these souls without just taking advantage of iframes or knowing exactly where they are. This also causes an issue when trying to save Reploids, which was stupid in X5 and they brought it back for X6. If you see a Reploid and there's a Nightmare Virus guy by them, better just rush on over. If not, the virus will kill off the Reploid and you can't come back to the stage to save them. This isn't a big deal until you realize some of these guys have important upgrades for saving them. The game doesn't tell you which have upgrades versus which don't, so you might as well try and save them all. To top all these things off, at times the camera doesn't do you any favors, leading to a cheap death from spikes or a pit. You find all this out just from the first level. If you're still in this cheap ride, it gets worse. I talk about Yamark himself, but many of the bosses in this game are pretty easy when compared to the crap stages you go through to get them. You can literally just stand there and shoot until he dies, and take a few hits while doing so. Ground Scaravage. This stage would be awesome, but it's RNG based. Each time you visit this museum stage, it's different. There are like 9 or so possibilities, approximately, of where you end up after killing totem pole type enemies, and you can get to only like, whichever one the game wants you to get to. There's an armor part in one of these, but if the game doesn't happen to take you there, you have to revisit the stage. You're doing this anyway, more than likely to get heart tanks, parts, sub-tanks, and so on. But these are cheap ways to add game time to a game littered with frustrating levels. Given this is the second boss, you have a weakness for him in every enemy moving forward. When you have boss weaknesses, some of the pathetic bosses you don't even need a weakness for anyway, become a real cakewalk. So perhaps we'll leave some footage in for some, but they're mostly not worth mentioning at all. Blaze, he thinks this stage is one of like 4 stages I would present to someone first playing it, for an idea of the nonsense to expect in the game. Not long after starting the stage, you fight a mini-boss. This is the Nightmare Snake. The thing that looks like a fucking donut. So anyway, you fight the donut, and you go through a section with fire, nightmares, and salvageable Reploids, all placed horribly, and BAM! Another donut. Awesome. Let's kill this thing again. A boss gate? Clearly I'm at the actual boss now. That was a short level. Wait a minute. It's another donut. Well, shit. Let's watch it go back and forth and chase it because I'm impatient and kill each and every one of the 4 corners like we already did. So here's another boss gate. The last one was a fake out. This is where the boss is. Fire's rising and here comes Blaze. Wait a minute. Another fucking donut? This is the 4th one. Could we get any more uninspired if we tried here? The stage auto-scrolls upward, and with the way it appears from time to time, you can only hit the bottom crystal sometimes without getting death by fire, which will lead to trying this more times than you really need to. There is an end when you get far enough up. At that point, though, you have little to no space to kill it off anyway, so you're probably dead. Honestly, after enough frustration, you get over it real quick. So just use a Giga attack and end it. Another boss gate awaits. This is all a joke, right? So yeah, we're going to go through this door, and spoilers, it isn't the boss. What could it be, I wonder? I want you to take one fucking guess. Just go ahead. Take a bit to think about it. Done? Another goddamn donut. What the fuck? So another boss door awaits. We're almost a half a dozen donuts here, so why not one more? Oh wait, the warning chime. Guess we're actually finding the boss now. Which again, the level itself is more threatening than the boss.
Blizzard Wolfgang. This is your typical slip and slide bullshit ice level. You can't climb walls, so if you fall down a pit due to some cheap trap, which do exist, you're dead. The only other thing worth mentioning is this nonsense section that involves waiting on ice blocks to fall to proceed. Now, one of these has you fitting in a blank space in a row of them, so you better jump on time. However, while in that space, if that row of ice hits the floor without you jumping up, you're frozen and there's a cheap one-hit kill for you. Are we seeing a pattern here? X6 is the Dark Souls of the X series. Just because it's hard doesn't make it bad. But this game does not hit the mark whatsoever. It's only hard due to bad design, which does nothing but frustrate the player and give you little reason to keep going. But we're going to do it anyway for the sake of this video.
Rainy Turtloid actually has a pretty neat stage. Acid Rain, excuse me, Nightmare Rain, yeah, it's actually called that, falls throughout the stage and drains your health slowly. You have to destroy these sometimes hard-to-see crystal-like things throughout the stage to then destroy a device that generates the rain, as it's protected by a barrier or otherwise. So, fast-forward some cheap deaths throughout to some sections where you need to ride platforms, and you're done with this one. Trying for the collectible items in the stage is a real bitch as well. Also, real quick, since you have to revisit stages a lot anyway, sometimes the stages you pick are red. If they are, you have the Nightmare version, which changes certain properties of a particular stage. I don't care enough about this game to show or tell what these changes are, so next! Metal Shark Player. What the fuck is a metal shark player? Apparently a pirate shark? The level is a giant trash compactor. Even if that isn't actually what it is, we will say it is, because this level is trash. Not because you have to be quick to avoid being crushed like Shredder in the Turtles movie, but because enemy placement be damned, sometimes there is an enemy in your path that can't be revealed, or won't be revealed until it's too late anyway, and chases a Reploid and then kills them, or hits you while trying to avoid death, and that's all she wrote. The music is pretty great, and you'll be hearing it a lot, so at least you have that going for you. Shield on. Did they even care to give this guy a level? They might as well have taken you straight to the boss. It takes more time to figure out the laser puzzle than it does to complete the level itself if you already know it. You're probably thinking, well, duh. But seriously, you could beat this level in like less than a minute. The alternate path takes you to bonus items which feel more like a level, but it's mostly just another laser puzzle that goes across a large part of the screen. Infinity Maginium. Badass music, not so badass level. You think this is a great level because of the music and the awesome robot in the background that does literally nothing but fire at you. That and all the other things going on and attacking you. The level is merely a straight line, nothing more. The boss? The boss is only remotely challenging because of screen span. You let this guy do enough for too long and you won't have much space to do anything without getting hit by clones of himself and green bubbles. Let's move on to more important matters here. So, I skipped over this before, but at some point you run into Nightmare Zero, because reasons. And then, you unlock Zero. You know, the one who's supposed to be dead. Now, he's died and come back to life before, sure, but X5 was the definitive end. For X6 to coexist and not force Inafune to rework the Mega Man Zero story, they could have left Zero dead. The desperation X has throughout the game, and his angry attitude towards some of the Mavericks, Gate being a crazy lunatic and obsessed with power, and X crushing him over the death of his friend. Let me stop here though, because we're getting a bit ahead of ourselves. So, Zero's in the game. Cool. One of his weapon commands involves up and the attack button. In order to slide on certain poles in the game, you have to hold up. If there's an enemy near the place you need to jump to, as you're holding up, you're probably going to attack the enemy to avoid death. However, the joke's on you. You just triggered the attack I mentioned, leading to death as a result. Who thought this was a good idea? This game is not designed with Zero in mind anyway, and you can make some bosses a joke with a Z-Buster. This game is not designed for Zero. You might say that it is. And really, I like Zero. I hear you. But take a look at what we have next. Enter Secret Lab Stage 1. The level's littered with spikes. Only some careful jumps and the jumper upgrade, which I believe you flat out need or you can't do this with Zero, is the only way to make this even possible. Now, the last few levels of this game have so many spikes, you might as well play the game in easy mode. And by that I mean use X's Shadow Armor. X's Shadow Armor allows you to not die from spikes. Now, the level still isn't all that easy because of wonderful enemy placement, as usual, but the main challenge is out the window with the Shadow Armor. Also, there's a cheap death in this level that's going to kill you upon first seeing you. It'll just happen. You go through a boss gate, which pauses your motion for a bit upon going through, thinking something will happen. Just have the fire from below rise up slightly and kill you. Now, my playthrough, I already knew about this, but if you don't, you're just dead. What a cheap fucking death. At the end of this stage, you fight Nightmare Mother, and it's a mother of a boss. Why is it called that? Because nightmares. This thing, or things, cells, molecules, DNA blocks, we'll go with that. So two big DNA blocks that take up a good portion of the boss room. They spin around until the eye in the middle, and each one has its own eye, pops out from time to time to hit it. Sounds simple enough, right? The eyes do attacks though, so when they come out, it makes it harder to hit them. And depending on where the eyes come out to be, you might not hit them at all. So mobility is key here. If your character's slow, you're taking a lot of hits. Zero, who seriously isn't designed for this game, his saber, even with extend, can only hit so much. I know this, so I decided to go X this time around for the footage. Now, your best bet is to hit where you can and do a well-placed Giga attack in a spot where you wouldn't be able to hit the eyes otherwise, when they come out to do maximum damage. Shadow Armor is sounding pretty nice, but you probably noticed it has no sub-weapons. On to the next level, but before that, you know the ultimate armor and the black armor that you fell in love with in X5 if you found it? You need a code for them in this game, so you don't get it until after you beat it. Of course, after you beat the game, it's really not fucking helpful. Hey, look, the next level has a bunch of spikes. This game wants you to use the Shadow Armor. If you want to make this game even more frustrating, you play as Zero. Now as X, you still have to deal with quite a bit anyway. A quick swap between characters would solve this, but I guess that was too hard to think of, so here we are. So after another gauntlet of spikes and totem pole enemies, we run into Hymax, some random OP robot made by Gate. Why is he OP? For starters, you basically can't damage him, mostly. The way this boss works is you have to hit him once with his weakness weapon to kind of stun him, then again to knock him to the floor for some damage. You only do one hit at a time though. So, that armor the game wants to force you to use, it has no sub-weapons. So you have to rely on using a charge shot with the Shadow Armor, which is a more powerful Z-Saber swing. So, you gotta be up and close and personal with him when he takes up a good part of the boss room, and can dash towards you at different points in time. He also has a Berserk-like status where he gets in the middle of the room and just fires off pretty big orb projectiles that will make short work of you. Are we having fun yet? Did you manage to somehow get through this? Gate is next, and not in a separate level. He's in the same level. So, up to this point, it is pretty clear the game has been forcing you towards using the Shadow Armor for an easier time. Did I mention it has no air dash? It's not going to make this second section any easier. Area 2 of the same stage has another Nightmare Rain section, so you're losing health over time. The stupid purple robot enemies, which I didn't mention before, they can only be hit in a select time frame. Now, they also happen to be right near a spot which you need to do a pixel-perfect dash jump off the wall in order to reach the platform on the other side. This is so precise and pixel-perfect that it's disgusting. But good luck getting here with Zero, who it's infinitely easier with. You know what else isn't easy? Yet something else in the game because you can't catch a break. If for some reason you want to come back here with Zero, by the way, you have to do Hymax all over again. Hope you didn't use all your resources on him. Gate, the second boss in the same stage, cannot be hit normally, like Hymax. So, Gate moves from place to place based on where you are. You have to move to access various platforms which are your only space for the fight. If you get knocked off of any of these platforms, you could fall to your death. You only can hit this guy by attacking one of many colored orbs that he shoots out from time to time. So hope you don't attack it too much to destroy it entirely, and hope that when you attacked it right, the orbs that come from doing so, they hit Gate and do next to no damage. So needless to say, this fight takes a while. About halfway in, he adds an attack that from time to time allows him to destroy some of the few platforms you can stand on during the fight. The different colored orbs each have different properties also. One slows you down, the other tries to drag you in. They all are just mostly something else to get in the way of you hitting Gate easier, or to knock you to your death. So, at the end of this, Gate suffers a pretty painful death from Sigma, who's back, because reasons.
調子に乗るな小僧。あの程度では死なぬわ。お前の助けなど必要なかったわ。邪魔だ。ヒーロー。
Sounds like death itself, and you see Isaac, who outside of a speech in the game is only seen here dead. All this just to set up a barely alive Sigma. Now, the final stage in this game is your only break in the whole game outside the intro stage. If you screw up in the boss rush and get a game over, you don't have to redo the bosses. If you killed 5, for example, those same 5 are still dead. Now, the dialogue during Sigma about X wanting to delete him is pretty serious. Like, X is done with Sigma's shit serious. This could have been the perfect send-off game done right. With combined elements from this game and X5 with less cheap deaths, it would have been great. Instead, we got this uninspired mess of a game. But hey, we got this far, so let's finish it. Zombie Sigma seems hard until you realize you can basically brute force him with the Z-Saber to death. The second form is much more menacing, but if you unleash a Giga attack, a good portion of the battle is pretty much done for you. If you have a sub-tank or two, there should be next to no problem finishing out the game. X7 is a game that makes me mad because they ruined what was otherwise a mostly good franchise throughout. X6 is a game that makes me sad because everything was in place to make a good game out of this and they got lazy. I suppose this is what happens when you rush a game out the door to the point where it literally came out the same year as X5 did. I'm not sure leaving in the dialogue as mentioned earlier is even a plus point, considering the US release is in Japanese. So if you have no English dialogue, why not just take it out? Perhaps this was the takeaway from the bad Japanese to English translation and spelling errors littered throughout the game, about as much as the Nightmare virus enemies. I suppose some good points are the ability to not listen to Alia if you don't want to. This avoids, of course, forced walls of text in each level, which X5 suffered from. And a lot of the music is actually outstanding. Now, these two small things, however, are two of very few saving graces this game has. The already working formula for 2 games in a row is not something they get plus points for. It was already there, and they managed to make a game that doesn't do them any justice. Good controls in a bad game still makes it a bad game. I'll go as far as to say that even some of the areas in the levels are pretty awesome. I like them. I like the ideas they put in place. But due to enemy placement and cheap deaths, it's just boring. It makes you want to literally run through enemies until you get to the end. Now, I can play Mega Man games recklessly on my own and run into a whole bunch of shit. But I shouldn't want to do that to beat the level. If I want to take my time in the level and enjoy it more, I should be able to. It just isn't something possible in this title. Let's make this point a bit stronger by referencing one of the Nightmare level effects, in which makes levels mostly dark and less visible, making it easier to die in a game that's already easy to die in. Again, not because it's necessarily hard, but due to cheap deaths. Now, apparently there's 3 endings for this game, 2 of which I've seen in my lifetime, and the other which I just YouTube. The Zero ending properly sets up Mega Man Zero after they decided we need another game against Inafune's will, and the other 2 aren't even worth mentioning. Just like Dynamo, who returns on alternate paths in some levels. He wasn't worth mentioning in X5, and is even less worth mentioning in this one. Oh, and there's also an alternative path for Zero in the second part of Gate Lab 2. And it's like the trash compactor section in Metal Shark Player's level. I'll let you guess how that compares to many of the other parts in this game. Is X6 or X7 the worst game in the franchise? I don't know that that's even worth pondering. They're both bad. No mistakes there. But this game could have been good. X7 has no redeeming qualities outside of on-the-fly character swapping. 3D wasn't new, not even for the series itself at the time, and the knockback mechanic is incredibly stupid. If you want to catch a more Let's Play type style video that I did for X7 on the VGHC channel sometime back, go for it. As for this whole journey, this is where our story ends. And this journey could have ended even with Capcom milking it one last time, properly. But the attempt landed flat on its ass about as quickly as gamers were quick to bitch about EA's loot boxes in Battlefront 2, which, like this game, are shit. On that same shitty note, why does Zero wield a light stick? Clearly the Z-Saber was meant to be left with X. As if the game should have been designed with just X, making the redeeming qualities of the story that do exist more impactful. Do you know there's a hard mode? It's extreme mode, actually, which puts even more enemies in the levels as if it wasn't bad enough already. More like an extreme waste of time. And given the game that this is about, That's exactly what we accomplished in this video.